Chuckie Egg is a video game released by ANF Software in 1983 initially for the ZX Spectrum, BBC Micro, and Dragon 3264. It was ported to the Commodore 64, Acorn Electron, MSX, Tatung Einstein, Amstrad CPC, and Atari 8-bit family. It was later updated for the Amiga, Atari ST, and IBM PC compatibles. The game was written by Nigel Alderton, then 16 or 17 years old. After a month or two of development, Nigel took a pre-release version of his Spectrum code to the two-year-old software company ANF, co-founded by Doug Anderson and Mike Fitzgerald, and F, respectively. Doug took on the simultaneous development of the BBC Micro version, whilst Mike Webb, an ANF employee, completed the Dragon port. Levels are largely the same between versions, and all the 8-bit versions have been cited as classics. The original idea is generally attributed to the then 16 or 17-year-old Nigel Alderton. After a month or two of development, Nigel took a pre-release version of his Spectrum code to the two-year-old software company ANF, co-founded by Doug Anderson and Mike Fitzgerald, and F, respectively. Doug took on the simultaneous development of the BBC Micro version, whilst Mike Webb, an ANF employee, completed the Dragon port. Chuckie Egg went on to sell over 1 million copies and remained a steady earner for ANF, who eventually went under in the latter half of the 1980s. The versions fall broadly into two groups, those with realistic physics, e.g. the BBC Micro and Amstrad CPC versions, and those without, e.g. the ZX Spectrum version. Although there is a substantial difference in play between the two, levels remain largely the same and all the 8-bit versions have been cited as classics. This game is often credited alongside Miner 2049 and Lode Runner with helping develop and popularize the platform game, and has gone on to be a cult classic with a number of unofficial retro remakes appearing online. Much of the game's cult status was helped by the fact that schools used BBC Micro computers, and many schools had a copy of the game, introducing it to a wide audience of youngsters. As Henhouse Harry, the player must collect the 12 eggs positioned in each level, before a countdown timer reaches 0. In addition, there are piles of seed which may be collected to increase points and stop the countdown timer for a while, but will otherwise be eaten by hens that patrol the level, causing them to pause. If the player touches a hen or falls through a gap in the bottom of the level, they lose a life. Each level is made of solid platforms, ladders, and occasionally lift platforms that move upwards and when they reach the top of the screen wrap around to the bottom. Hitting the top of the screen while on one of these lifts, however, will also cause the player to lose a life. 8 levels are defined and are played initially under the watch of a giant caged duck. Upon completion of all 8, the levels are played again without hens, but Harry is now pursued by the freed duck flying around the screen and homing in on him. For a second completion of all 8 levels yields a third play-through with both hens and the duck. A fourth pass introduces additional hens. Finally, a fifth pass has the duck and additional hens moving at a greater speed. If the player completes all 40 levels, then they advance to level 41, which is in fact exactly the same as level 33. The player starts with 5 lives, and an extra life is awarded every 10,000 points. The original ZX Spectrum release peaked at number 12 in the multiple formats chart in late 1983. The following year the BBC version reached the top of the BBC charts for 1 week, 6, 7. The Telegraph named the game one of the best video game platformers ever, deeming that it had been a revelation when released, though it noted that the game would appear dated to a modern player. 8. Ollie Toms of Rock, Paper, Shotgun praised the game's portrayal of the antagonist, Caged Duck, finding that the progression of the game allowed for the player to characterize her effectively. The AZ of Atari 8-bit games gave the game a score of 7 out of 10, praising its graphics while criticizing its sound effects, and finding that the game had a certain charm. The Spectrum version of the game was later rated number 13 in the Sinclair official Top 100 Games of All Time. In 1996, GamesMaster ranked Chuckie Egg 86th on their Top 100 Games of All Time.